Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Can I ask people to quiet down and take their seats? Yes. It's on. Can you mute, please? Yeah, thanks. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Leldon Langley. I'm the Director of the Division of Watershed Management at the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, known as MassDEP. I'm here representing MassDEP as the hearing officer for a public hearing being held at 6 p.m. on Thursday, August 24th, 2023. Tonight with me from MassDEP are several of my colleagues, Doug Guttrow, Kathy Canieras, David Boyer, Seth Pickering, Gerard Martin, and John Handrahan. If you need assistance, any of these folks would be happy to help you. Find your way, sign in if you wish to comment, or anything else that you might need information about. First, I'd like to go through logistics for tonight's hearing. The hearing is a hybrid hearing being held here at Plymouth Town Hall's Great Hall with overflow seating available in the courtroom, room 1820, here in the Town Hall. It's just down the hall, and there are people seated there now. The hearing is also being held virtually through the Zoom platform, broadcast live on PAC TV, YouTube page, as well as several public access channels, and will be posted tomorrow on YouTube. We're requesting that the front row of seating be reserved for people with mobility issues if they need it. If you've not done so already, please sign in on the sign-in sheets available at the Great Hall entrance if you wish to comment. We will use the sign-in sheets to identify the order in which people have requested to provide comments, although we will first hear from elected and appointed officials, after which I will call on people attending in person in the order in which they've signed in. Those in the courtroom will be able to comment from there. When called upon, please make your way to the lectern to provide your comments so that your comments can be heard, broadcast, and recorded. Tonight's broadcast is being recorded for anyone who wants to know. If you have restricted mobility issues, we have a microphone to be brought to your seat. Just please raise your hand when I call your name, and the microphone will be brought to you. When providing comments, please state your name and affiliation if you are speaking on behalf of a group or organization, and then provide your comments. Following completion of the comments of the in-person attendees, I will call on the virtual attendees in the order in which they have raised their virtual hand. John Handrahan is going to manage the Zoom platform for us. To minimize background noise and interference, the host has muted all remote participants and turned off the chat function. You will be unmuted in the order you raised your hands and then asked to state your name and affiliation if you're speaking on behalf of a group or organization and provide your comments. If you're using a cell phone, you can use *9 to raise or lower your hand and press *6 to toggle mute or unmute. Commenters will be limited to 3 minutes. I'll be strict about this in order to be respectful of others who would also like to comment. We will use a timer which will be started at the beginning of each speaker's comments. My colleague, Kathy Canieras, will ring a bell and hold up a card to indicate when you have 30 seconds remaining, and ring the bell twice and hold up a card to indicate when time is up. Once you hear the final signal, please conclude your comments as quickly as possible and yield the floor to the next speaker. We have many speakers to get to tonight, so your cooperation in complying with the time restriction is appreciated. If there's time left after everyone has been given the opportunity to speak once, we may allow additional comments from previous speakers. I also ask that you keep your comments relevant to the subject of the department's tentative determination. MassDEP will not be responding to your comments. This is a public hearing. We're only here to listen and record your comments. MassDEP strongly encourages written comments to be submitted by email to massdep.npdes@mass.gov, subject line Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station. If not possible, please send by U.S. mail to Kathy Canieras, MassDEP, 100 Cambridge Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 02114. MassDEP would like to thank the town of Plymouth for hosting this event and PAC TV for all the hard work they did to make this hearing available to everyone. I'll now call the hearing to order. This is a public hearing being held under the provisions of state law. The Massachusetts Clean Waters Act, General Laws, Chapter 21, Sections 26 to 53, And the Code of Massachusetts regulations at 314 CMR 3 prohibit the discharge of pollutants to waters of the Commonwealth unless authorized by a permit issued by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Holtec Decommissioning International, LLC, filed a permit modification application for the 2020 surface water discharge permit, Massachusetts permit number MA0003557, that was issued to Holtec Pilgrim, LLC, and MassDEP has issued a tentative determination to deny the permit application. MassDEP updated its public notice of its tentative determination, which was originally published on July 24, 2023, to extend the public comment period until August 31, 2023 at 5 p.m., and to provide notice of this public hearing. The Department's procedural regulations for surface water discharge permits require MassDEP to issue a draft determination and hold a public comment period before issuing a final decision. MassDEP is holding this public hearing pursuant to 314 CMR 2.07. MassDEP will fully consider all written and oral comments received at this hearing, in addition to all written comments received by the agency prior to the deadline of August 31, 2023. I'll now call the hearing to order. I'd like to first call elected and appointed officials who wish to speak in the order in which they've signed in. If I could please have Mr. Jim Cantwell from Senator Markey's office.
Not too much, David. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate this hearing tonight. My name is Jim Cantwell. I have the distinct honor of being the State Director for Senator Ed Markey. I'm joined by Ben Thomas and Katie Morfill from the Senator's office. I'm here to read a statement from Senator Markey into the record, and I note that I'm joined by my close colleagues Michael Jackman from Congressman Keating's office and Caleb White from Senator Warren's office. The statement of Senator Markey begins as follows. Thank you to the Energy and Environmental Secretary Tepper, Commissioner Heipel, Assistant Commissioner Doug Gutrow here tonight, and the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection for convening tonight's public hearing, Mr. Chairman, with yourself, and for taking a strong stand against Holtec's proposed discharge into Cape Cod Bay. From the shores of Duxbury to the tip of P-Town, from oyster farmers to fishermen, from school children to seniors, the community's voices have collectively decried the potential impacts from a radioactive wastewater discharge on the public health, economic well-being, and the bay's treasured marine ecosystems and species. These concerns were raised at a hearing that Senator Markey conducted of the United States Senate Environment and Public Works Committee at this very town hall in May of 2022, during which, by the way, Assistant Attorney General Seth Schofield was representing Attorney General Maura Healey's office and was one of the star witnesses. The concerns that people raised that day have been heard, and the Senator applauds the Healey-Driscoll administration from hearing all those concerns loud and clear and for taking bold action. Today is a great day for environmental justice and a great day for the people of Cape Cod Bay. Thank you to the NDCAP Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel members, including Pixie and Jim Lampert, who originally highlighted that a discharge would be a violation of the Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act, as well as Henrietta Constantino and Andrew Gottlieb of the Association to Preserve Cape Cod. MassDEP's interim decision to deny Holtec's permit modification request is a win for the environment and for all of the people, businesses, and organizations that rely on Cape Cod's reputation for clean and safe water. When Holtec took over the decommissioning of the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station in 2019, the company promised the community an open and transparent decommissioning process. A promise Holtec CEO Dr. Singh repeated to Senator Markey last May during that hearing that we mentioned. There also is a commitment to not undertake any discharge without the consent of stakeholders, including Senator Markey's office, state and federal agencies, then Attorney General Maura Healey, as well as the Commonwealth. While today's hearing and the testimony that I suspect you'll hear tonight is further evidence that the stakeholders and communities do not consent to a discharge. In the years since, Holtec has fallen short on the commitment that was made to Senator Markey last May in regard to its plans to discharge 1 million gallons of radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay, but the people of Cape Cod Bay are putting up a fight. For the last 2 years, countless citizens have voiced their concerns to the Senator's office. to the the Plymouth Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel, and to state and federal agencies, and have been protesting by the Cape Downwinders who are here tonight, and the Save Our Bay Coalition. Senator Markey ends by saying, I will continue to partner with Senator Warren, Congressman Keating, our state leaders, like tonight Sue Moran, our great friend Senator Sue Moran, to hold Holtec accountable to the law, to the environment, and to the people. To quote a famous singer, talk about a dream, then try to make it real. The senator says, I have no doubt tonight's hearing will be a new crescendo in the battle to stop Holtec. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm now calling Mr. Barry Potvin from the town of Plymouth.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to thank the DEP for holding this hearing. It's a valuable thing that we need to do for the people of Plymouth. I'm Dr. Barry Potvin. I have a doctoral degree in genetics. I'm also the chairperson of the Plymouth Board of Health. The Plymouth Board of Health consists of 5 uncompensated volunteers who are totally dedicated to preserve the health and the well-being of and the safety of our residents and of our visitors. It's become obvious that Holtec's primary motivation for dumping the radioactive wastewater into Cape Cod Bay is to maximize their corporate profits. For much too long, our precious, fragile environment has suffered from the dumping of hazardous wastes into our rivers, bays, and oceans. This must stop. And it is the responsibility of all of us to see to it that it does. So I thank everyone who has come out tonight, and I thank everyone who has worked so hard in making sure that Holtec hears our plea. Thank you.
Senator Susan Moran.
Thank you very much. I'm Senator Susan Moran, the senator for the Plymouth Barnstable District, and I do not consent to 1 drop of radioactive nuclear waste going into Cape Cod Bay. I wish to express my full support for the Watershed Management Division's tentative determination to deny Holtec International's application to modify their permit for the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station. Affirming the denial recognizes the inherent risks that the improper disposal of nuclear wastewater poses to our coastal communities. Affirming the denial protects the irreplaceable natural resources that define our region for generations to come. I commend the department for its diligent and rigorous analysis. The Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act, a cornerstone of our environmental protection framework, embodies our commitment to safeguarding the pristine waters surrounding Cape Cod Bay and all coastal waters in the Commonwealth. Its intent is to protect our aquatic ecosystems from threats and enshrine the ideal of environmental stewardship. The department's interpretation of the Act explicitly prohibits the proposed discharge of the 1.1 million gallons of radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay by Holtec. I concur with the department's interpretation and applaud its unwavering dedication to enforcing state law. The potential consequences of Holtec's plan are alarming. Recent data from DEP revealed elevated levels of various potentially dangerous and hazardous substances, including PFAS, tritium, and boron, in the plant's spent fuel pool. Disposing of such a large volume of water containing these substances would no doubt adversely affect the delicate habitat and diverse wildlife that make up our coast, as well as the health of generations to come. This has far-reaching ramifications and could significantly harm the region's tourism industry, seafood production, and overall ecological health. I want to thank the delegations who have partnered in this, both federal and state, from both sides of the canal, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Senator. I'm now calling Caleb White from Senator Warren's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for everyone attending tonight, and thank you to the town of Plymouth for hosting this evening. My name is Caleb White. I have the honor of serving as Senator Warren's Regional Director for the South Coast, Cape, and Islands. And I did want to take the opportunity to share a quick comment from Senator Warren this evening to be read into the record. Senator Warren says, Cape Cod Bay serves as a major environmental sanctuary for a vast variety of ocean life, a stunning natural beauty, and an economic hub for thousands of individuals from Boston to Provincetown. As Cape Cod Bay is a protected ocean sanctuary, impactful decisions such as this dumping require intense and heightened scrutiny. We must take these extra steps so as not to damage the delicate balance that it currently exists. Protection of Cape Cod Bay is non-negotiable. I appreciate the time and effort that the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection has put forth in their tentative decision. It's clear that MassDEP has looked over the facts and has proposed a decision that is best for Cape Cod Bay. I thank MassDEP for their work as well as their communication and openness throughout this process. I also want to extend my thanks for the tireless commitment from the public who have taken significant time to formulate their thoughts and share them here both tonight and at NDCAP meetings. Thank you as well to the many state officials and elected representatives present. Your contributions in this process are essential. Senator Warren is committed to the continued partnership with all involved agencies in order to ensure the best decision is made for the community and the environment around it. Thank you again to everyone here tonight. Senator Warren looks forward to continuing to work through this with you all. Thank you.
Now calling Michael Jackman from Congressman Bill Keating's office.
Thank you. My name is Michael Jackman, District Director for Congressman Bill Keating. I'd like to read his comments, public comments that we've submitted for this hearing period. I write to support the decision by the Department of Environmental Protection to deny Holtec Decommissioning International's request to modify its surface water discharge permit to allow for the discharge of 1.1 million gallons of industrial waste into Cape Cod Bay. I urge the Department to affirm this tentative determination and to issue a final determination that closes out the possibility that HDI will move forward with this rash, misguided proposal. Since the day several years ago that my office learned that Holtec intended to dump this contaminated water into Cape Cod Bay, despite its public statements that it was open to all other options, I have worked with my partners in the federal and state delegations, environmental activists, and concerned citizens to oppose this scheme. We have recognized the threats that HDI's plans pose to our local natural resources, to our fishing and tourism industries, and to the health and safety of our residents. The tentative determination announced by DEP last month recognizes these dangers and correctly adheres to the regulatory framework set out by the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. The tentative determination includes a clear analysis of the Ocean Sanctuaries Act and how it applies to the proposed modification. The water subject to this proposed modification is not the product of electrical power generation, nor does it qualify for any other exemptions mentioned in Section 16 of the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. Therefore, I urge the Department to uphold this preliminary decision and issue a final determination prohibiting HDI from discharging this wastewater into Cape Cod Bay or other protected waters. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who's representing an elected or appointed official who would like to speak? Okay, thank you then. I'll now call others in the order in which they've registered. Mr. James Lambert.
Good evening. I'm Jim Lampert. I'm a graduate of MIT and Harvard Law School. I'm a member of NDCAP and Duxbury's Nuclear Advisory Committee. I will be submitting a 50-page comment to DEP saying that you should deny Holtec's application not only because of the Ocean Sanctuaries Act, but also because what Holtec wants to do is prohibited by the Endangered Species Act, Massachusetts Crimes Against Public Health, and DEP's own anti-degradation regulations. There's no time tonight to get into those in detail, but I would like to make a few brief points. Holtec's application says that what it wants to discharge is industrial wastewater. That is precisely what is prohibited by the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. Regarding Holtec's application, if you read it, it becomes pretty clear that Holtec was concerned only with getting an EPA permit. They must have expected that the state would go along with whatever Holtec did and simply didn't care about Massachusetts laws or regulations. The application never mentions them. The application ignores Holtec's contractual agreement to comply with Massachusetts laws. If Holtec thought about Massachusetts at all, it must have hoped that it would be able to convince you, and perhaps a court, that EPA permits and NRC regs would override anything Massachusetts might do. That is a vain hope. The Federal Clean Water Act could not be clearer. Massachusetts can have regulations that are more stringent than those of the EPA. Holtec should also read another EP regulation. EPA cannot issue a permit unless the Commonwealth certifies that the proposed permit complies with state law. As for the NRC, the Supreme Court has made it pretty clear. The NRC does not have exclusive jurisdiction over all things nuclear. 4 different nuclear companies tried to convince the court that a state could stop what they wanted to do. 4 times the Supreme Court said they could not. Our government's position is clear. Massachusetts can stop Holtec's discharge based on the settlement agreement and state and federal laws. Finally, the settlement agreement is a valid and enforceable contract. Holtec must live to what it contractually agreed. Thank you for your attention. I ask that you deny Holtec's application on multiple grounds.
Mary Lampert, to the lectern, please.
I'm Mary Lampert, and I'm providing this testimony on behalf of Pilgrim Watch. DEP correctly found Holtec's request to modify the permit violates the Ocean Sanctuary Law. The legislature recognized back in 1972 that Cape Cod Bay's economic, ecological, recreational, and aesthetic values needed a high level of protection. My written testimony goes into detail. For those same reasons, Holtec's modification request must be denied because it will violate additional laws: the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, the National Sanctuary Act that protects Stellwagen Bank 6 miles off the coast of Provincetown, Massachusetts Crimes Against Public Health that makes it a crime to deposit or discharge waste or other material of any kind in or upon coastal or inland waters, the Massachusetts Oil and Hazardous Material Release Prevention Act, all define pollutants as including both radionuclides and chemicals, and say 0 pollutants in these waters. Holtec admits its filtering will not remove all pollutants. Also, the state's anti-degradation requirements would be violated by the discharge. These are all laws that DEP should include in its final denial, so as to be able to use them in court if Holtec files an appeal. Multiple arrows in the quiver are better than one. Do not forget that Holtec Pilgrim agreed to follow state laws in its settlement agreement, June 2020. It's also important that EPA cannot issue Holtec's requested permit unless DEP certifies that the modified EPA permit complies with state laws, all the laws. For that reason, Pilgrim Watch asks that DEP not only deny Holtec's application, but it also informs EPA that the state will not certify any EPA permit allowing Holtec's a proposed discharge. The Commonwealth's administration, elected federal, state, and town officials, organizations representing trade groups, public interest groups, and last and most important, thousands of citizens, consistently and correctly repeated, not one drop.
Next is Jean Lane.
I'm a townie. I was born in this town, but I went away for a number of years after I graduated from college. I was a research scientist at Columbia Medical Center for 20 years. But I am speaking as a town meeting member. I've been back for about 15 years. I've served as a town meeting member for over 10 years, not this past year because I had a heart problem. I have a cane, and I hobbled up. But I haven't been public speaking lately. I've been speaking in New York City, though, at City Council where I lived in Manhattan. And I'm rusty about speaking. But I was going to read the bumper sticker that I'm going to put on my car that I got from the demonstration. It says, Holtec, our bay is not your dump. Save our bay, protect Cape Cod. No Pilgrim reactive water dumping here. And I really mean it. This is worthwhile for me to get up and speak. I need to speak out again, and I don't like doing it. I'm scared. I'm nervous. But I've done it before. I even took acting lessons so I could do it better. Or dancing lessons so I could loosen up and get to the stage. I usually only speak for the children of this town in the education meetings. But this is where we have to start, saving our bay. There was a baby whale found in the harbor in Manamet, and it came up dead over there in Duxbury last week. Now, I hold Holtec responsible for that baby whale being in our harbor. They warmed our water by all of their putting the radioactive water in, and they brought in the seals. The lobstermen are upset. Things are getting caught in traps, and good God, this got to stop. And I think Massachusetts should show Holtec that they're not above the law.
Ben Cronin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dr. Benjamin Cronin. I am a member of the Town of Duxbury Nuclear Advisory Committee, in which capacity I'm speaking tonight. MassDEP's tentative determination to deny Holtec's application for a permit is correct, and DEP's final determination should likewise deny Holtec's application for the same reason. Holtec's proposed discharge of approximately 1.1 million gallons of radioactively and chemically contaminated wastewater into Cape Cod Bay is plainly illegal. It would violate at least 4 Massachusetts statutes, as well as the department's own regulations. The department, therefore, must deny Holtec's permit application. First, contrary to what is sometimes erroneously asserted, there is no federal preemption here. Holtec signed a contract with the Commonwealth in 2020 called the Settlement Agreement. In this contract, which Holtec freely entered into, it undertakes to follow Massachusetts laws and regulations. A contract is not preempted. Even if this contract did not exist, there still would be no preemption in this instance. U.S. Supreme Court case law going back 40 years is very clear. The nuclear industry may not use the federal preemption claim as a kind of blank check to evade state laws. Rather, the court in 4 different decisions held that states retain their legitimate authority under the U.S. Constitution to regulate their economies and environments. Since Massachusetts laws do in fact apply here, we should examine 4 of them. The Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act is the law upon which the department's tentative determination relies. At Section 13B, the Act defines all of Cape Cod Bay, including Plymouth, Kingston, and Duxbury Bays, as a protected ocean sanctuary. At Section 15.4, the Act prohibits, quote, the dumping or discharge of commercial, municipal, domestic, or industrial waste, end quote, into any ocean sanctuary. By Holtec's own admission, the water in question will contain tritium, a radioactive isotope of hydrogen which cannot be filtered out. Because of this, and despite any assertions to the contrary, the water in question is plainly waste under the definition given at 301 CMR 27.02. Quote, waste means any unwanted, discarded, or environmentally harmful solid, liquid, or gaseous materials resulting from commercial, municipal, domestic, or industrial activities, end quote. It is plainly waste we are talking about here, under the meaning of the Act. And in fact, Holtec undercuts these claims when it's in its own application, it refers to, quote, industrial wastewater, end quote. There are other acts which would be violated, the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, the Massachusetts Oil and Hazardous Waste Act, and the Crimes Against the Public Health statute. In fact, it's not just at the level of statutory law, but also at regulatory law that we find violations. MassDEP's own regulations with respect to anti-degradation standards prohibit the proposed discharge, whether into outstanding resource waters, into which it would simply be prohibited outright, or into high-quality waters, where it would only be allowed if it were necessary to, quote, accommodate important social, or economic, or social development in the area in which the waters are located, end quote. The opposite is the case, I would suggest. We have a very valuable blue economy worth approximately $1.78 billion, if not more, and these would not be accommodated by any discharge, and the opposite's the case. Thank you very much.
Irene Caldwell. Leslie Danielson.
Hello, my name is Leslie Danielson, and I represent the Save Our Bay Group. I am also a Plymouth resident and a stakeholder. I would like to first thank and commend the MassDEP for its attention and action, as well as Chairman Langley for being here this evening. DEP's tentative determination correctly denies Holtec application because Holtec's planned discharge is prohibited under the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. This act specifically prohibits the dumping or discharge of, quote, industrial waste into protected ocean sanctuary. Cape Cod Bay, Plymouth Harbor, Kingston Harbor, and Duxbury Harbor are all protected sanctuaries. Holtec's request does not meet any criteria for exemption of this act, being generation of electricity, which ceased 4 years ago, and this proposed release is not a pre-existing continuation of work prior to Cape Cod Bay's sanctuary designation in 1971. Holtec admits the industrial wastewater proposed for discharge is a new source. DEP is also correct to deny the application based on the Endangered Species Act, which states you cannot alter the habitat of a threatened or endangered species. Also, the Crimes Against Public Health Act, which makes it a criminal offense to discharge or deposit waste in any coastal or inland water. And the DEP's anti-degradation regulations. Cape Cod Bay is designated as high-quality waters. For discharge to be allowed, it would have to be insignificant and or have economic or social importance. The contaminated water will flow into at least 3 areas that are designated as outstanding water resource: the western shore of Cape Cod National Seashore, Wellfleet Harbor, and Barnstable Harbor. And it would also reach 4 areas of critical environmental concerns, violating Massachusetts law. Any discharge would also flow north into Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, which would violate federal law. Holtec's application admits that even after treatment, the wastewater will include both radionuclides and chemical pollutants. In June 2020, Holtec signed a settlement agreement in which Holtec agreed to comply with Massachusetts laws and regulations. Agreeing to and signing that settlement clearly states Holtec agrees to follow all Massachusetts laws. This was Holtec's undeniable choice. It has been questioned that waste has not been defined. Let me be clear. According to the laws and regulations, the Ocean Sanctuaries Act has the definition of industrial waste as any unwanted or discarded liquid materials resulting from industrial activities. Holtec's application states at least 4 times that the water is industrial wastewater. In conclusion, the MassDEP should finalize the denial of this permit request because it is illegal under multiple state and federal laws. Holtec can ship the water to an appropriate licensed facility like Vermont has done. And Holtec has a vile track record for safety, legal, and moral ethics that puts profit above all. Thank you.
Sheila Lynch Bentman, and I'm not sure I got that name right, so please correct me on the record if I didn't.
Sheila Lynch Bentman. No one can pronounce nor spell my husband's last name, Bentman.
Apparently I can't read it either. So.
Yeah, but you're not the first. I would like to thank the Commonwealth and all the employees, starting with the Governor, Maura Healey, for applauding the initial determination of denial and strongly encourage you to follow up with a final denial. I was president of Save the Harbor, Save the Bay in the 1990s during the Boston Harbor cleanup, but now I live in Duxbury, Massachusetts, and I swim, fish, and use Cape Cod Bay. I would also like to thank APCC and their legal counsel for their wonderful work on the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. I submitted written comments, which I will not repeat, but I'd like to make a few additional points. I am afraid some people in the room are tangentially funded by Holtec and its subsidiaries to voice their wishes for ocean dumping of radioactive water. My feeling is they should identify their funding, but they will not. It should be required by the Commonwealth for a speaker to identify if they have been funded by the proponent before commenting, but it is not, which is a shame. Second comment, if federal preemption does happen, which I hope it doesn't, there has been 0 Chapter 7A analysis of endangered species in Cape Cod Bay. All the endangered species analysis that has been done regarding previous hot water effect was done by Entergy and Boston Edison. Holtec's final EIS for closure did not analyze radioactive wastewater on the following endangered species in Cape Cod Bay: loggerhead turtle, green turtle, leatherback turtle, Kemp Ridley turtle, sea whale, fen whale, North Atlantic right whale, humpback whale, sturgeon, and others. I think that anyone who is a citizen in this area should file a Citizens Endangered Species Act complaint against Holtec if federal preemption is happening. I would like to repeat thanking the Commonwealth for their initial determination of denial and encouraging strongly a final determination. Thank you.
Ray Ajimian.
I will be brief. I can't speak to the laws as others have, and I'm not qualified at that. I just want to make one point. If some of you remember, 2 or 3 years ago, the Boeing 737 MAX crashed. And when it crashed, Boeing said, nothing's wrong with the plane. There's probably the pilot error. Then another crash happened. Nothing, and again, Boeing said, it's not the plane. Finally, after other countries grounded the Boeing 737, the United States did also. Boeing went back to the drawing boards and said, oh, we do have a problem. It's in the software. They corrected it, and the plane is flying now, and they're selling a lot of them. My point is this: if Holtec is wrong, and the dumping does cause serious problems, how do you go back to the drawing board when it's already been done? Thank you.
Paul Quintal.
Thank you to the MassDEP for being here, and particularly the people of this crowd who are listening at home alone and participating in tonight's hearing. My name is Paul Quintal, and I have operated passenger vessels upon the Massachusetts waters for the past 50 years. I am a longtime member of the Plymouth Harbor Committee, Mass Lobstermen's Association, Plymouth Lobstermen's Association, and my thoughts here tonight are mine alone. I don't represent those groups. I've attended all but 2 of the NDCAP meetings here over the past 2 years. I have kept an open mind trying to understand the viewpoints of both sides of dumping radioactive wastewater into the bay. From a boater's perspective, Cape Cod Bay is an NDA, no discharge area. All vessels now carry holding tanks and discharge shoreside. Plymouth was one of the first Massachusetts harbors that initiated an NDA. I'm proud to say that for our community. Boaters care about keeping Cape Cod Bay clean. Some people take a look at Cape Cod Bay as a big 20-mile circular bowl, 200 feet in depth in places. Most don't consider what you can't see. Bottom structure in Cape Cod Bay is diverse. Within a few miles of the Pilgrim Power Plant, there is sand, mud, rock, and ledge. I have some names most people in this room have never heard. Fonces, Coles Hill, Offshore Ledge, Outer Caps, Inner Caps, the Urchin Bottom, Station Grounds, and others. These are rocky areas all within a few miles of the plant that create a nursery ground for a variety of organisms, from invertebrates, plankton, fish, mammals, and shellfish. We also have bluefin tuna and right whales that are 40 tons within sight of that plant. Any release that moves in the water column or sinks will certainly end up lodged in the rocks and ledges forever. One of my lifetime goals is to leave Cape Cod Bay and this planet a better place. Please deny the Holtec modification permit request. Thank you for the time to speak.
John Keenan.
Hello, I'm John Keenan. My wife Joanne and I live in East Dennis. Our home is a short walk from Cape Cod Bay. I am extremely concerned about Holtec's plan to dump radioactive and chemically contaminated wastewater into Cape Cod Bay. A study by Dr. Irina Rapina of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution indicates that there is, quote, high likelihood to encounter the wastewaters in the bay offshore of Dennis, as well as near Race Point and the beaches of the northern Outer Cape. 94 years ago, a young woman named Rachel Carson headed from Pennsylvania to Cape Cod. She would spend several summers in Woods Hole studying marine biology and working for the U.S. Fisheries Department. Eventually, she would write several books about the ocean and its beauty. In 1957, pesticides contaminated land and killed songbirds in Duxbury, Massachusetts, just a few miles from here. The event helped Rachel realize that it is not enough to love nature, we must protect nature. She wrote the book Silent Spring that became the catalyst of the modern environmental movement. It is now our time to protect nature. I urge the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection to deny Holtec's application to discharge radioactive and chemically contaminated wastewater into our beloved Cape Cod Bay. I am also concerned about a recent report that alleges that Holtec is already evaporating contaminated wastewater at the site of the Plymouth nuclear power plant. In my opinion, evaporation is just another means of dumping radioactive and chemically contaminated wastewater into our environment, including the Massachusetts ocean sanctuaries. Thank you.
Joanne Wilson Keenan.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Joanne Wilson Keenan, and my husband John and I moved to East Dennis 15 years ago. Nearly every day of those 15 years, I have taken long walks by the bay in the early morning. On rare occasions, I have been humbled to behold the majesty of the North Atlantic right whales. One spring morning, I encountered over a dozen of these whales, mothers and babies, splashing, blowing, slapping their tails. At first, I thought I was seeing some gigantic boulders that I had never seen before. And then I thought that this was some kind of surreal, partially submerged freight train. And then I realized that I was in the blessed presence of the whales. North Atlantic right whales are one of the most critically endangered populations on this planet. I am in grave fear that they will be exposed to even greater harm if Holtec's radioactive and chemically contaminated water is dumped into their sanctuary or evaporated into that food source, into the water that they filter to obtain their food. A sanctuary is a safe haven, a place where one is protected, where someone can relax and breathe, or an animal can relax and breathe. A nursery for young. On behalf of the North Atlantic right whales and all the other marine life in our bays, I urge you to honor the Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act that prohibits the dumping or discharge of commercial, municipal, domestic, or industrial waste into our protected ocean sanctuaries, and other Massachusetts laws as well. To do otherwise would be illegal. And then briefly, as my husband mentioned, we just found out that Holtec may be evaporating water up the stack, which is putting radioactive and contaminated chemicals into the air above our bay. These could include tritium, cesium, strontium, and plutonium. We were stunned by this revelation, and we hope to find out more about it. And as Diane Turco warns us, we must stay vigilant. It is the time, and it is up to us to do so. Thank you very much.
Susan Mursky.
Hello, I'm Susan Mursky. I'm here speaking from Massachusetts Peace Action. I'm on the board, and Mass Peace Action represents thousands of people across the state, and so I'm here speaking for those people across the state. I'm also an old member of Boston Downwinders because we know that what happens at Pilgrim affects so many people. We are appalled at what Holtec is doing. The dumping of irradiated water into Cape Cod Bay is outrageous. I want to thank the elected officials and you people here from various organizations, speaking from your heart, speaking with intelligence, speaking with knowledge. Thank you, because you are helping all of us. You know, I asked Henrietta, oh, gee, what should I say? And she said, speak from the heart. So, speaking from the heart, I'm also a grandmother. And so I think of the future. And I think, oh my God, what are we doing? What is Holtec doing for the health and the future of our children, for the plants, for the water? What are we doing, and how can we save our future? Thank you.
Jamel Graham.
Hello, I'm Jamel Graham. I want to thank everybody in this room, and especially the handicap and everybody for coming to bat for the earth. I'm really grateful that everything went Zoom, that I've been able to attend the handicap meetings. I don't believe I've missed a single one. And I've been likewise really listening, wanting to find solution that works for everybody. What has come to me to share today is this beautiful map. So this map is a map actually of the ocean floor. And what's fascinating to me about this map is that it shows mountains and ledges and crevasses and ravines, these little tiny places that make it look exactly like our topography that we see. But this is under the sea. This is the magnificent world of our earth under the sea. And the thought that goes with this in brief is that whatever we do to the earth today, we're going to find out down the road how well it worked, and our children are going to pay for that. And how many children, how many lives, how many communities, how many stories of loving this planet are under the sea that we haven't even discovered yet would we be putting at risk if we take the step of putting something we know is toxic, we know does tremendous harm, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. So we know that there's a lot more we don't know. And that if we know for 1 second that there's a potential of causing any harm to any life, I feel as a moral person, I have an obligation to stand here and say no. Thank you for listening.
Don Kieran.
Good evening. My name is Don Kieran. I'm Assistant Director with the Association to Preserve Cape Cod. We're the Cape's nonprofit environmental organization. Simply put, the proposed Holtec discharge into Cape Cod Bay is illegal under Massachusetts state law through the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. We've argued this for many, many months, have submitted some comments to DEP prior to this, and we believe that DEP's draft determination to deny Holtec's permit is correct. Actually, we strongly believe that there is no other choice but to deny the permit under the state law. We plan to submit very extensive written comments to DEP in the coming days. But we wanted to go on record tonight to applaud DEP for their draft determination and to urge DEP to follow through with finalization of that determination to deny Holtec's permit. Thank you very much.
Brian Campbell.
My name is Brian Campbell, retired electrical engineer, and I strongly support discharging the treated water from Pilgrim Nuclear Station into Cape Cod Bay. Generation Atomic calculates the water outside the plant, if one were to hypothetically consume it, they would need to drink approximately 80 gallons to equal the radiation dose of eating a single banana. The presentations to Holtec to NDCAP shows Holtec to be a good corporate citizen performing the Pilgrim decommissioning in a truthful and open manner that should be commended. Instead, Senator Markey expects Holtec to fund NGO $263 million a year Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute study for treated water discharge. Unfair. Holtec is right to refuse Markey's funding demands. Markey is funding the study with taxpayer-funded $75,000 grant from NOAA, Sea Grant. I question the bias of this study, as $263 million a year, WHOI shifts its conclusions on studies depending on funding sources. On the endangered right whale, Woods Hole Marine Ecological, Mark Baumganter said in an interview, "We already have a fairly industrialized ocean with shipping traffic and fishing activities. Adding these large wind farms with many, many, many turbines is certainly concerning." Woods Hole said they received a $500,000 donation directly from Ørsted and supports offshore wind. In a May 2022 memo, Sean Haynes, NOAA Chief of Protected Species, penned his concerns about how offshore wind construction and surveying could disrupt the endangered Atlantic right whale. The development of offshore wind poses risks to these species, which is magnified in southern New England waters due to the species' abundance and distribution. SaveTheRightWhales.org's Thrown to the Wind documentary will bring attention to the correlation between expansion of offshore wind energy and the rise in whales' deaths along the East Coast. Where is MassDEP on the real dangers to the endangered right whales? or are they to be sacrificed on the altar of green profits? Profits.
Order, please. Douglas Long. Order, please.
Good evening. Thank you for the meeting. And I rise and speak to support the denial of the permit to dump radioactive water and other chemical pollutants into Cape Cod Bay. I'm a resident of Orleans on Cape Cod. We have a major beach, Skakit Beach, which is populated densely in the summertime by kids and babies and toddlers, teens and other rascals. And they all are in the water. And can you imagine the next, let's say if this actually horrible thing happens, then how many kids are going to go into radioactive water? How many parents are going to come to Cape Cod and tell their kids, wow, this is so exciting. We have radiation coming your way to coat your arms and legs and bodies and that sort of thing. I think it's a horrible, obviously, idea. And it makes no common sense, does it? To actively put radioactive, poisonous chemicals, radioactive materials into water that is very important to millions of people. It makes no sense. Only if you can make a lot of money doing it, as Holtec is trying to do, and to railroad over the citizens of Massachusetts and their common sense and their desire to protect their kids, their families, their parents, and not to mention the natural environment of Cape Cod Bay. I mean, it's absurd and stupid from the very get-go. There's no, now, and all over the United States, the same kinds of outfits, sorry about that, like Holtec, are gathering up lots of money to decommission nuke plants all over the country because they're all being decommissioned, right? China has said no to Japanese fish because Fukushima, right, 6 reactors down, and they're dumping that water into the Pacific Ocean today, thank you very much. And the Hudson River, the plant just north of New York City, is dumping their radioactive water into the Hudson River, which is recuperated from a horrible century of pollution. So does this make any sense? No. Sometimes it's just, this makes no sense. It's bad. And it's, of course, it's illegal, but how about ingesting poison intentionally? And poisoning the entire ecosystem intentionally because they can't figure out another way to do it. They built the plants. We've been fighting them for 35 years, and they still make problems. Big, fatal, mortal problems. Thank you very much. Please deny the permit.
Henrietta Cosentino.
I'm Henrietta Cosentino, and I'm here on behalf of the Plymouth Area League of Women Voters and on behalf of all of the state league and on behalf of women and children and men and families everywhere. Our league advocates for human and environmental health and well-being, and this June, as part of its commitment to sustainable environmental practices. The State League, disturbed by the prospect of Holtec's dumping, made it an action priority to support a ban on the discharge of contaminated nuclear wastewater. And we are so happy to know that state law is with us. But the rule of law is under siege, more often than not by corporations like Holtec, which sacrifice our safety for their profit. So we are especially grateful for this assurance, and thanks especially to the DEP and to Maura Healey, for this assurance that our state is committed to the laws that Holtec agreed to obey when it signed the settlement agreement. Our ocean sanctuary law is very clear: not one drop of contaminated nuclear wastewater, 0 into an ocean sanctuary. The DEP's temporary determination affirms this law and strengthens our trust in the agency and in the state. We hope the denial will be made permanent. It is notable that Holtec never acknowledges state authority in defiance of its settlement agreement. And now, thwarted in their attempt to dump their waste into our bay, Holtec is trying out a new way to circumvent the law: forced evaporation, according to an anonymous whistleblower who charges Holtec with a massive breach of trust. In a letter sent Monday to Cape Downwinders, Diane Turco, and to Jack Priest in the Department of Public Health. I'm not sure if you've received this letter, and if you haven't, I would be very happy to send it to you. First, despite promising not to discharge the water into the environment, Holtec balked at the cost of shipping to an off-site rad waste facility and applied for a modification, as you know. Now, with that permit in doubt, Holtec's site's vice president charged the plant engineering to, quote, devise a plan to install evaporators in the dryer separator pit on the refuel floor and to boil away the water volume. The water vapor then is drawn up through the building's ventilation system and discharged through the vent stack into the air, where it will come back to Earth as radioactive dewdrops or raindrops or snowflakes or just rain. I don't have time to go into any further details of the letter, but there are quite a few. I greatly appreciate, I and the entire league greatly appreciates the action you have taken, and we pray that you will make it permanent. I'd like to end with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi: "The earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. Thank you for protecting them and us." And carry on. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lex Lagerteria. I am 22, and I am part of the future that many wonderful speakers have discussed. I have come as a concerned citizen, but more as a concerned ecologist. You see, I just graduated college with a degree in plant science with a concentration in ecological restoration and that sort. So I want to start with the facts. The number one cause of extinction is habitat loss and degradation. And this is almost entirely human-caused. And as we've discussed time and time again, the dumping is illegal according to the Endangered Species Act. Many species, which already are facing enough from our industrialized waters of boating and everything, we don't need to give them another hit. And we have high quality habitat. And nowadays, that is something that's becoming few and far between. The higher quality your habitat, the more it can handle hits or things that affect it. but we don't need to be the cause of that. We need to make sure that those high-quality habitats are maintained. So if there is unpredictable natural disasters or anything, our species can maintain some sort of diversity. But dumping radiation, it does say that there's no effect to humans, but have we done severe research looking at endangered species and how they're affecting? Endangered species are our moral right and morally our duty to take care of. So if we dump radiation and we don't really know everything it's going to do, there are 3 ways that it affects marine animals. It can kill them outright, it can pass on bizarre mutations, or it can go up through the food chain. There are some small shrimps in our ocean waters, specifically because our waters are cold. We have a lot of really unique species, and warming those waters is also going to cause some effects. And no matter what, those effects, if we have a species of shrimp go extinct, that's going to eventually affect our right whale species. Overall, these populations have done enough. Haven't we as humans done enough? My future depends on what you guys do. I'm watching closely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble with the handwriting of the next person. I believe it's Chandler Aney. Chandler Aney? Sorry? Could be. My apologies. Yeah.
My name is Chuck Adey. I'm a graduate mechanical engineer from Northeastern. I've been living in Plymouth since 1971 when I was part of the startup team for the Pilgrim Nuclear Plant, and I was responsible for General Electric services to the plant for the first 2 refueling cycles. I was appointed a member of the initial Town of Plymouth Nuclear Matters Committee and served until such time my business travel precluded further participation. I was subsequently reappointed in 2013. In reviewing the Holtec application, none of the proposed discharges would have any more impact on Cape Cod Bay than what has been going on for over the 47 years of Pilgrim's operation. The concentration of some of the contaminants proposed for release are far below what already exists in seawater. Continual oversight, including comprehensive sampling and analysis since before startup and throughout plant operations by the DEC, has been found to have no adverse impact on the bay. Neither would the discharge of the proposed 1.1 million gallons of the processed spent fuel pool, torus, dryer separator, and reactor cavities water. There is a long history of opposition to the construction and operation of the Pilgrim plant. That has not abated with the shutdown of plant operations, nor do I expect it will cease until long after the last spent fuel cask has left the site. I believe that this opposition has become smarter, more organized, better funded, and more powerful politically. In the Commonwealth, this can be seen by the open opposition to anything nuclear by many elected officials, up to and including the governor. It can also be seen in the fact that the Energy Committee responsible for the new Commonwealth Energy Plan refused to even include the word nuclear in the plan. However, and paradoxically, it was recently reported that our governor is looking to buy some of the output from the Millstone nuclear power plant. As the regulator, you are charged with protecting the environment. That means to me your actions must also be fiscally responsible. While it is nice to think that no one in the Commonwealth will pay for the substantial cost of this decision, nothing could be further from the truth. I believe with the technical resources at your disposal that you can reach a basis for the disposal of these waters. I would ask that you reconsider your proposed final decision.
Thank you. Pine Dubois.
Pine Dubois, resident of Kingston. I've served on the Pilgrim NDCAP since 2017. I work for the nonprofit Jones River Watershed Association as executive director. From the late 70s, I was involved in various levels of environmental monitoring of Pilgrim Station, including serving on the town's emergency management. JRWA was active in commenting on the Pilgrim license renewal in 2012 and the long-expired NIPD's permit for the 480 million gallon a day intake and discharge into the bay. With Cape Cod Baywatch, we were mostly concerned with the recurring death of thousands of fish and the discharge of heated water into the bay. In 2015 and 16, we reviewed Pilgrim's required flooding analysis after the Fukushima disaster in 2011. JRWA's consultants showed that the information used in that AREVA report was old and out of date, and that sea level rise and the incidence of flooding would be worse than projected. We asked for more accurate mapping and provided our findings to the NRC. Whoops, and I lost my place. Sorry about that. To the NRC, DOE, Entergy, and others. We have known for a long time about tritium in the groundwater, which interacts with the tides and flows to the sea. Cape Cod Bay has inputs of tritium from Pilgrim for the last 47 years it was operating and since. Tritium is not new, and it is not at levels that should inspire concern. What concerns me most is that a delay in dealing with the remaining wastewater will most certainly delay decommissioning of the entire site. Sea level is, in fact, rising more quickly than previously projected. It is rising faster here than almost anywhere in the world. If we fail to expeditiously clean up the remainder of the Pilgrim site, including removing the reactor building, the spent fuel pool, Taurus, and all components, if we fail to remediate stormwater systems and the contamination that we know is in the soils, virtually all of that contamination will migrate to the bay. This will be much more than the remaining wastewater, which can be filtered and treated multiple times and controlled with strategic releases, but only if we work toward that end to protect the ecological interests in the bay. Nowhere in the DEP or CZM letters do the agencies mention any concern for sea level rise or the timeline for site cleanup. To imply the daily discharge of 1 million gallons of water from the Plymouth Municipal Sewer into Plymouth Harbor, and the daily dispersion of between 360 million gallons and 1,000 million gallons from the wastewater in Deer Island that flows our way each day with the prevailing current is of no consequence, but this million gallons is very harmful, is impossible to believe. I have participated in the long-term sampling of the river and the bays and have worked with both DEP and CZM to make improvements to the water quality of our ecosystem. It is my belief that we must approach this problem as our problem to solve, because it is.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Rosemary Shields, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Cape Cod area, and I'm following up also with what Henrietta said about the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, the League of Women Voters of Plymouth. We have about 50 or 60, I don't know how many, local leagues, and they're all concerned about the dumping in Cape Cod Bay. The League of Women Voters fully commends and supports the State Department of Environmental Protection tentative determination to deny Holtec
Pilgrim's permit application to discharge radioactive chemically contaminated water into Cape Cod Bay. This decision is correctly based on the DEP legal finding that the discharge by industrial sites such as Pilgrim is definitely prohibited by the State Ocean Sanctuaries Act. Holtec must comply with state laws. I urge you to issue a final determination to deny the permit, thereby upholding state regulations for our ocean sanctuaries in Plymouth, Duxbury, Kingston, and Cape Cod Bay remain protected. Right after the Massachusetts Department announcement of a tentative denial on Holtec's dumping plan, Holtec spokesman Pat O'Brien said, "This process has already delayed the completion of the project for an additional 4 years." This statement is blatantly disingenuous. For the previous Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel meeting in May, David Noyes of Holtec announced that Holtec itself was halting the work for 4 additional years to grow revenues of the ratepayers' decommissioning fund in the market and flatten the labor cost curves. The delay is Holtec's alone and distorts the work of what Massachusetts DEP is doing. And anybody who's concerned about the site cleanup taking too long, all they have to do is look at what Holtec is doing to delay it for further years. This is just one indication that Holtec has not been acting in good faith. And I have been going to the NDCAP meetings for the past 4 years. There have been members of the League of Women Voters who've been going since their inception. And we keep hearing things from Holtec all through this, including Markey's Senate hearing, that they're speaking through both sides of their mouth. And what do we do? And people saying that there is no danger of tritium and all this other stuff, all you got to do is look at what the Massachusetts Department of Health has put together over 20, 40 years of cancer clusters. And let me tell you, Plymouth is full of cancer clusters, so it's kind of hard for me to hear that there's no danger here. So anyway, but thank you. I just want to thank Massachusetts DEP for denying this permit, and please do it for your final determination. Thank you very much.
Joanne Kerrigan.
Hi, Joanne Corrigan. I live at Priscilla Beach, which is a neighborhood that's practically in the parking lot at Pilgrim. And I've been coming down here since 1947. And one good thing about being elderly, we might not remember what happened yesterday, but boy, I remember what happened since they've opened this place. And every time they got above 85% online, they had us shut down. And that was at the get-go of it all. Now, it's disturbing that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is in bed with the nuke industry, that's no big surprise, that they have the final say. Let's not forget the proper study of mankind as man. Let's not forget the NRC relicensed Plymouth, Pilgrim, and it was in the red degraded column, not for a few months like it normally is, and they have a corrective action plan, and they fix it. They didn't fix it. They just kept licensing them and letting them get away with it, and they were in that red degraded one step from nuclear, from a mandatory shutdown for years. Years, we were all in danger down here. The other thing, this whistleblower, and I don't know if supposedly the letter went to DEP. I hope you're going to follow it up somehow. I don't think this is just some wacko tree hugger like the rest of us. I think this is someone who seriously is worried about the health of his coworkers and himself. He's jeopardizing his job. And I don't blame him for being anonymous, because in the past, when I would speak against the power plant, I would have beer bottles on my lawn and everything else. But that's all right, I have a pretty thick skin. So I would hope DEP at some point will put independent monitoring around the power plant till all that stuff is gone, to monitor the air and the water, to find out what really is coming out of there in real time, and have it independent and not let Holtec run that show. Also, I don't know what that guy learned at Northeastern, but I had a different instructor when I had radiation protection classes. And he said to me, he said to my class, because I was in the X-ray program at Northeastern, and he said, if the one thing you take away from my class, just remember, just because you don't see it, that it's not there. And that's what they're doing over there. We can't see it, hear it, taste it. My grandkids are fifth generation on that beach. It's near and dear to me, and the radiation is accumulative. And Holtec has a very sketchy history of following environmental laws and protocols. So I would hope DEP stands by not giving them the permit. Thank you for being here.
Next speaker is Elaine Dickinson.
Well, I'm channeling Diane Turco, whose name's been mentioned a few times tonight. She's homesick and couldn't make it. So she is the director of the Cape Downwinders who received the anonymous letter. My name is Elaine Dickinson, and both Diane and I are from Harwich on the Cape. Cape Downwinders strongly supports the Mass Department of Environmental Protection tentative determination to deny Holtec surface water discharge permit. We also applaud Governor Healy, who continually affirmed her opposition to the proposed illegal Holtec dumping. Holtec bought Pilgrim to profit from the ratepayers' $1.1 billion decommissioning trust fund. It's a lot cheaper and faster to dump. However, Holtec is bound by the settlement agreement and must abide by the state law. No dumping. So this is the first step in halting Holtec's illegal plan, but they still plan to pursue the dumping. You know, Holtec has a history of ignoring state authority and violating laws to their advantage. However, Holtec Corporation is meeting resistance not only here, but across the U.S. In New Jersey, former Holtec Chief Financial Officer Kevin O'Rourke was fired when he refused to cook the books with false and misleading statements to protect company profit. He filed a whistleblower lawsuit against Holtec owner Chris Singh and others. In Michigan, a request has been submitted for the investigation of Holtec for malfeasance and misuse of $44 million of the decommissioning trust funds. In New Mexico, Attorney General Hector Balderas filed a lawsuit citing collusion between Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Holtec, and misrepresentation and misleading statements as Holtec tries to build an illegal waste storage facility against strong opposition by the state and people. Recently, New Yorkers, we are in this together, they fought Holtec's plan to dump radioactive wastewater in the Hudson River, drinking water for tens of thousands of people, and passed a law for no dumping. Yet Holtec is disappointed and plans to pursue legal actions against the will of the people. And just this week, an anonymous letter for Pilgrim Insider revealed that Holtec is forcing evaporation of the radiological industrial wastewater. They can't dump in the bay, so now they're using our airways as their sewer, spewing radionuclides into our neighborhoods. Tritium is even more dangerous when airborne, impacting the most vulnerable, the fetus, the child, and females. Given the history of this unethical and predatory corporation, we must remain vigilant. Today, as Cape Downwinders join the global outrage, as Fukushima radioactive wastewater is being dumped into the Pacific, we are resolved that the decommissioning of Pilgrim will not contaminate our common waters. We therefore urge the Department of Environmental Protection to make a final determination to deny Holtec's application. Thank you for upholding the law and protecting Cape Cod Bay.
Amital Zuckerman. Apologies on the name.
Thank you. I live in Plymouth. I'm a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby, South Shore. It's a national and international organization. We are fighting to reduce the carbon footprints. We work with the solar, we work with the correct land use, and wind power, but no matter what we do, if our environment is poisoned. And that's what Holtec is doing. It's poisoning the environment of this nation. So I was very happy to hear about the DEP finally doing the tentative denial, and I'm here to urge everybody, including the DEP, to make it final. Thank you very much.
Mia Sanders. Okay. Susan Tordella.
I'm a member of Eco-Nuclear Solutions, a volunteer, unpaid group that cares about the environment like most people in this room. I've worked as a volunteer and also as a program director to balance our need for energy and its impact to the planet. Think back to the last big storm and the huge inconvenience of that blackout that basically stopped your life. Then thank nuclear energy for the 20% of electricity it provides the New England grid from Seabrook and Millstone plants. And it contains 100% of its byproducts, nearly. It is economically and social vital. Thank you, Plymouth, for hosting the station here that produced dependable, affordable electricity with zero carbon emissions. No fossil plant can make such claims. So now we're talking about 1.2 million gallons. That's about 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools going into the ocean. It's diluted industrial waste. It is not nuclear waste. It's our waste from making electricity, from using electricity every day. I support the discharge with the confidence it will not harm the environment based on data, the record of decades of safe discharge, and again, because it's ours. Why is nuclear energy treated differently from an ordinary, let's say, boat marina or a coal plant? I'd like to ask the guy who owns the marina how much trouble he has making sure that pollutants and contaminants don't enter the marina. Can we guarantee anything 100% safety and purity? Markey's aide talked about environmental justice. If the water is not disposed of here or evaporated, we're going to send it downstream, likely to a poorer community, and our electric bills will rise. We will end up paying more. So there's the PFAS that is in this. It was probably already in the water. I don't think Holtec added it. I know it's in my drinking water. Tritium is it's already found in the ocean. It's a natural part of helium that is found in the ocean. If you Google boron, Google boron right now. It's found in food and pharmaceuticals as well as dietary supplements. So the DEP asserts the discharge is not new. So let's say if we compared this discharge to what happens in a marina, there's about 20 marinas in the area that add significant pollutants to the water, much more than, let's say, the 2 swimming pools worth of water from a cooling pool. Electricity is the engine of our lives. Think about that blackout that you endured. And remember, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. To the DEP, I say, think again. Don't condemn nuclear power. We need it. It's a valuable trade-off for 45 years of reliable electricity in exchange for the discharge of just 2 swimming pools worth of safely treated industrial waste.
Sean M. Noyes.
Good evening. My name is Sean Noyes. I'm part of Eco Nuclear Solutions. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. I'd like to address the notion that MassDEP's denial of the Surface Water Discharge Permit Amendment is based on the Marine Sanctuaries Act. While it's important to respect regulations that protect our environment, we must also critically assess the applicability of such regulations. The proposed discharge of low level of non-radionuclides, as well as radionuclides from the Pilgrim plant, should be evaluated on its own merit, based on scientific evidence as well as existing regulatory framework. In fact, I would like to point out that the plant's request for discharge predates the enactment of the Marine Sanctuaries Act in December 1971. This means that the Pilgrim plant can be considered to fall within the criteria for a plant grandfathered outside the Act. We cannot overlook the importance of maintaining a balanced perspective between safeguarding the environment and ensuring that our regulations respect the historical context of facilities, their existing operations. Moreover, the argument that decommissioning is not inherently tied to the operation of a power plant is just flawed. Dismantling and decommissioning are essential phases in the life cycle of any power plant. It's only logical, but also integral to responsible management of such facilities. The existence of decommissioning funds underscores this fact, highlighting that planning for the end of plant's operational life is a fundamental consideration in its design as well as management. Let's address these concerns about the proposed discharge being characterized as new. It's important to acknowledge that the Pilgrim plant has discharged treated water from various sources, including the spent fuel pool, reactor cavity, dryer separated plant, and Taurus, using the same and even inferior quality water for over 45 years of its operation. This track record should not be dismissed lightly, as it speaks to the plant's operational reliability and the effectiveness of the treatment processes. Furthermore, we must consider the broader context of the environmental impact. The discharge in question involves low levels of emissions, which, when properly treated, can be reduced to safe, permissible levels. We must not lose sight of the fact that stringent regulations and monitoring mechanisms are in place to ensure that any discharges in our water meet strict safety standards. In conclusion, I urge careful consideration of the facts and historical context surrounding the Holtec proposal. We must avoid making decisions based on misconceptions or preconceived notions. Holtec has demonstrated its adherence to regulations and its commitment to environmentally responsible practices. As we strive to balance the need for clean energy and the protection of our environment, it's crucial that we make decisions grounded in science and evidence rather than allowing emotion to cloud our judgment. Thank you for your time and attention.
Steve Carter. Steve Carter to the lectern, please. Last call for Steve Carter. Okay. Paul Francis, sorry.
My name is Paul Francis. I've lived in Plymouth one way or the other for 81 years, and I love this place, I really do. I applaud the decision to deny Holtec the dumping into our bay. I see a whole pile of different political persuasions, social agendas, all coming together for the same common end. Back in the winter, I came to a meeting in this room And I gave some facts, which I'd like to reiterate, if I could, and I'll be very brief. There's 1.1 million gallons of water being discharged, or potentially to be discharged. Each gallon contains 4 liters. That's 4.4 million liters of water. In 1 liter of water, there is, well, let's put it this way. In the palm of your hand tomorrow when you go and pour a little water from the sink and you're about to do this or do this, take a look at that little amount of water there. That's approximately 1 mole, which the chemists call. It's 18 grams or 18 milliliters. And in that, there is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd in plain English is 602 octillion particles, molecules of water, just in that little crook of your hand. There's 55.5 of those in 1 liter. That's more particles of water than there are grains of sand on all of the beaches of the earth. Think about it. Think about it. And I'll hold a tutorial in the parking lot afterwards. Now, multiply that times 4.4 million liters. That's an awful lot of particles. If you were to take 1 liter and dump it into the bay, wait for complete circulation, come back after complete circulation, which we know there isn't, the abyssal parts of the ocean just do not dissolve. If you were to pull that out years later, you would have thousands of the original molecules back in that liter. We're talking 4.4 million liters. Thank you all. And I ask, you're in the red zone now. Don't drop the ball. Thank you very much.
A.D. Geller. Is there an A.D. Geller who would like to speak? I got that right? Once more, A.D. Geller. Okay. How about Richard Knowlton?
Yes, I've been an environmentalist all my life. It'll contrast with what I got to say, but when I was a 20-year-old, I engaged in the employment of dredging and excavation. I've done Duxbury Harbor, Plymouth Harbor, New York Harbor. I've been around every military installation, classified and unclassified materials, stuff brought back from the first Iraq War. And what we do is we excavate the bottom, we bring it up and we put it into a barge, and then we take it offshore and discharge. When I was 20 years old, nearly half a century ago, I personally dumped millions of tons out on the Cape Cod Bay dump. I've done offshore, midshore, past continental shelf dumps. I've done worked with military, with different weapon systems, stuff, Agent Orange, everything. And the only reason I'm saying this, I'm familiar with the containment systems that you put the stuff in and then you take them out, and you can have a slow discharge, you can dump all at once or anything. But there's a very big market right now for single skin and double skin obsolete oil barges, and those can be picked up for like less than $500,000. Those could be, one of those could be procured that would take 10 times the capacity of the 1.1 million gallons you have. Brought right into the station, securely attached to thing. The discharged water could be put in that, and you could go post-continental shelf, way out into the currents, and you could disperse that easily. If it's low income, doesn't this, under the Laura C treaties, the toxicity of this, does it meet those? But that could be taken into deep ocean. That could be done for a fraction of this $20 million cost. It could be done now and not one drop would get into the circular motion of this bay. It's something I think you should consider. I don't want to see it dumped out with this whales or there's anything, but if it's going to be dumped, I think that's an option you should consider. That's post-continental shelf, deep, mid-current, what we call blue water. I know this. Thank you very much.
Brian Donnelly. Sorry, mic wasn't on.
Hello, I'm Brian Donnelly, and I'm going to take a little different tact. There have been numerous arguments, assertions made to encourage the EP to, in fact, cease Holtec from proceeding with dumping either into waters or into the air. The tack I'm taking is that there have been numerous assertions, and there's been, among which are, in fact, the assertion that there is an illegal approach that is being taken by Holtec. What is the mystery? I'm a little puzzled. So my question is, as opposed to making assertions, many of which have been made tonight, and I suspect these assertions have been laid out previously, why is it that we are debating what is something that is illegal? It's a mystery. So my work has been with community college students in particular. My work has been in higher education, and I believe that the median age of community college students is 29 years. And I think that we ought to be able to demonstrate that we can take what is laid out clearly in front of us as something as an illegal action and treat it as such and deal with it from that perspective. Does that make sense? Yes. Yes. Thank you. I couldn't bear with having the ring of the bell.
Folks, I would ask that you keep side conversations to a minimum so that we can hear the speakers and so that the recording can also make sure to pick them up, okay? Thank you. Next, I'm calling Margaret Rankin. Margaret Rankin. Margaret Rankin. Thomas Rankin. Is Thomas Rankin here and wishes to speak? Okay. Edward Rankin. Edward Rankin? Okay. And I'm concerned I'm going to get the next pronunciation wrong, so forgive me for that. Debbie Kolodzil?
It's Kaloji, and I'm going to pass.
Okay. All right. That brings us to the last speaker that I have registered, Ed Saliba. Ed Saliba? Okay. David, are there any other commenters in the courtroom? No? Okay. All right, so we're going to now turn to see if there are any Zoom attendees who would like to voice their comments.
If you're online and would like to speak, please raise your hand and I'll take you in the order that the system shows you. First up is Jacqueline Dreschler. You can unmute your microphone.
Hey, hello there. I'm calling in from New York, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I would like to say, first of all, that here in New York, we don't have an Ocean Sanctuary Act, but in New York State, we did recently pass the Save the Hudson Bill on August 18th. We asked our Governor Hochul to take the lead the way your Governor Healy did. So the second thing I'd like to say is that we applaud Massachusetts and all of your elected officials and environmental advocates in standing strong against the dumping of radioactive wastewater. I would also like to say, and here in New York, we stand in solidarity with you in the continuing battles you will be going through with Holtec, as we surely will be too regarding Indian Point. We are a sister state in the fight for health and safety of all living beings. I'd also like to say that not only is the waste hazardous, whether it's in the water or air, but so is the company Holtec. They are hazardous, nefarious, and criminal. On Tuesday, we received a letter from a worker at Pilgrim stating that they had been directed by Holtec to evaporate tritium-laden water vented out of a stack that did not monitor or measure the air pollution. I urge all of you to go to Dr. Gordon Edwards, who's an international expert on tritium, to his website at ccnr@web.ca. So today, we in New York received notice through a reporter that Holtec was served with a violation notice for transporting radioactive waste from a decommissioned plant, Oyster Creek in New Jersey, to Indian Point in Buchanan, New York. 2 radioactive packages arrived, one of which gave off levels of radiation more than double the limit set by the Department of Transportation. Holtec is not responsible. So in ending, I would like to say that Holtec is duplicitous and dangerous, and I urge the DEP, please don't be tentative, just deny this permit. Thank you very much.
Online, Arthur DeLogis, you can unmute your microphone and speak.
Could I ask line to lower their hands after they've spoken, please?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to give oral comments. My name is Art DeSloges, and I represent the Massachusetts chapter of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is the oldest and largest grassroots organization dedicated to protecting our environment. The Sierra Club's mission is to not only protect the Earth's resources, but to stand up for environmental justice. Environmental justice requires that those who are impacted by the discharge of this radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay must get real and meaningful input into the decision. So we began our journey for justice. Tonight, we have heard many arguments on the legality and laws that govern this decision. But on another level, these laws must serve justice. It is the justice demanded by ordinary citizens to live free of concern from the health impacts of this discharge. It is the justice required by those who risk a loss of livelihood due to reputation risk. And it is the justice sought by all those who have a deep respect for our environment. This journey for justice started many months ago. We stood together on Coles Hill, refusing to allow one drop of this water to be dumped. We stood shoulder to shoulder in front of Town Hall in the sleet, demanding that we be heard. We endured the long wait at the Town Hall handicap meetings for our turn to tell our public officials that we do not want this dump. Arm in arm we made the long march to the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant to protect our health and defend our environment. Our efforts worked. We compelled regulators to consider our health, our economy, and our environment in this tentative determination. And tonight, we are here to see that this ruling becomes permanent, because justice requires it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else online who would wish to speak this evening?
Anyone else who has spoken who wishes to make further remarks? Anyone who has not spoken who wishes to make remarks? Okay. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I appreciate your patience, your cooperation this evening. Once again, I'd like to thank the town of Plymouth for hosting and PAC TV for all of their efforts in making this possible in both in-person and online forums. Members of the media, thank you. And everyone have a good night. I'd like to close this public hearing at 8:03 p.m.